stop dating younger guys. I have learned this the hard way. A lot of men that are in their 20s are still building. They are not ready to be the provider and protector of a household.
Picture this scenario. Thousands of women across America suddenly declaring they're done with men forever, shaving their heads in dramatic protest videos, and swearing off dating for the next 4 years. Sound familiar? Well, that's exactly what's happening right now with the so-called 4B movement that's supposedly sweeping the nation. But here's the thing nobody wants to talk about. This entire movement is built on a foundation of misunderstanding, misdirected anger, and frankly, it's destined to fail spectacularly. Now, before we dive deep into why this movement is crashing and burning faster than a budget airline, let's establish what we're actually dealing with here. The 4B movement originated in South Korea, and the 4Bs represent 4 Korean words that all start with the sound "bi", meaning no dating men, no sleeping with men, no marrying men, and no having children with men. But here's where it gets interesting. And by interesting, I mean completely ridiculous. These American women jumping on this bandwagon have fundamentally misunderstood what the Korean 4B movement was actually about. In South Korea, this movement emerged from very specific cultural and economic pressures that simply don't exist in America. We're talking about a country where students regularly study 15 hours a day, where getting into the right university literally determines your entire life trajectory, and where working 60 to 70 hours a week is considered normal. The Korean education system is so brutal that students who easily get accepted to Harvard or Oxford regularly get rejected from Korean universities despite perfect test scores.
We all tend to invest ourselves in relationships. And as I said, if you are doing something right with the wrong person,
Korean women aren't avoiding relationships because they hate men or because of some political statement. They're avoiding them because their society has created an environment where having a family means sacrificing everything they've worked their entire lives to achieve. When you've been grinding since you were 12 years old just to survive in an ultra-competitive society, the idea of giving up your career to raise children becomes terrifying. This isn't about gender politics. It's about economic survival. But American women? They've taken this movement and twisted it into something completely different. Instead of addressing real economic concerns, they're using it as a weapon in political warfare. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. These women are screaming about losing their rights while living in literally the freest country in the world for women. They can own property, start businesses, run for office, and yes, even own guns and shoot them all day long if that's what makes them happy. Now here's where the plot thickens, and trust me, this is where it gets really good. The American version of 4B is failing for several critical reasons that nobody in the mainstream media wants to acknowledge. First and foremost, this isn't the first time we've seen this exact same tantrum. These women tried this same strategy in April, then again in March of last year, and before that, in May of the previous year. Each time they declared it was for real this time, and each time it fizzled out faster than a cheap firework. Why does it keep failing? Because the fundamental premise is flawed. Most of the women screaming about 4B weren't dating conservative or moderate men to begin with. They were already living in their own ideological bubble, only interacting with men who shared their exact political views. So when they declare they're going to stop dating men, they're essentially threatening to stop doing something they weren't doing anyway. It's like me threatening to stop playing professional basketball. The threat is meaningless because I was never doing it in the first place. But wait, it gets even better. These women have completely missed the most important detail about the Korean 4B movement. It's actually deeply hostile to the very communities they claim to support. The original 4B movement in Korea is radically feminist in the most traditional sense, meaning they have very clear ideas about what constitutes a woman. They view transgender women as infiltrators and consider any woman in a romantic relationship with a man as a traitor to the cause. The movement is so aggressive and exclusionary that even Korean feminists find it too extreme. So we have American women who support transgender rights enthusiastically promoting a movement that fundamentally opposes those rights. We have transgender women on social media expressing solidarity with a movement that literally sees them as enemies.
Life is honestly so much easier when you learn how to stop caring about men.
The cognitive dissonance is absolutely staggering, and it perfectly illustrates how little research these people do before jumping on the latest outrage bandwagon. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room that nobody wants to address. Almost half of all women voted the same way as the men these 4B women are supposedly punishing. So if you're going to blame men for political outcomes, you also have to blame the millions of women who voted identically. But somehow, the 4B crowd completely ignores this inconvenient fact and focuses all their rage on men, as if women had no agency in the democratic process. This reveals something deeper about the movement that's actually quite troubling. By threatening to withhold intimacy as a form of political punishment, these women are inadvertently reinforcing two stereotypes that feminism has fought against for decades. First, that women's primary value lies in their sexuality and their ability to provide or withhold it. Second, that feminists are primarily motivated by hatred of men rather than genuine concern for women's advancement. The economic realities make this movement even more absurd. American women have more economic opportunities than women anywhere else in the world at any point in history. They're not facing the crushing economic pressures that drive the Korean movement. They're not working themselves to death in hyper-competitive environments with no hope of advancement. Many of them have the luxury of choice that Korean women can only dream about. Here's another reality check that's going to sting. American culture places enormous value on romantic relationships and marriage. The entire entertainment industry, social media landscape, and cultural messaging system revolves around finding love, getting married, and building families. The idea that millions of American women are going to permanently opt out of this system is laughable. The pull of romantic connection is simply too strong, especially when the alternative is isolation and loneliness. But perhaps the most damning evidence against the 4B movement's potential success is basic mathematics. If only politically progressive women participate in this movement, while conservative and moderate women continue dating, marrying, and having children, what do you think happens to the next generation? Conservative families will simply outproduce progressive ones, creating a demographic shift that works directly against the movement's political goals. The movement also fails to account for the diversity of American women's experiences and desires. Many women genuinely enjoy traditional relationships and family structures.
Every woman has a right not only to independence and security, but to live her life.
They find fulfillment in marriage and motherhood, and no amount of political pressure is going to change that fundamental aspect of human nature. Telling these women they should reject happiness and fulfillment for the sake of a political statement is not just unrealistic, it's cruel. Meanwhile, the men these women claim to be punishing are largely unaffected by their threats. Conservative and moderate men aren't suddenly going to change their political views because a group of women they weren't dating anyway threatens to continue not dating them. If anything, this movement removes difficult and ideologically incompatible people from the dating pool, potentially making it easier for everyone else to find compatible partners. The 4B movement in America represents everything wrong with performative activism. It's loud, attention-grabbing, and completely ineffective at creating real change. Instead of addressing actual policy concerns through constructive political engagement, it relies on dramatic gestures and empty threats. Instead of building bridges and finding common ground, it deepens divisions and creates more animosity between different groups. What makes this even more frustrating is that there are real issues affecting women that deserve attention and activism.
The more a woman prioritizes her career over her feminine energy and her relationship.
Economic inequality, healthcare access, workplace discrimination. These are concrete problems that require practical solutions. But instead of focusing energy on these substantive issues, we get viral videos of women shaving their heads and declaring war on half the population. The failure of the 4B movement in America is inevitable because it's based on false premises, misunderstood origins, and unrealistic expectations about human behavior. It will fade away just like all the other attention-seeking movements that came before it, leaving behind nothing but embarrassing social media posts and a few regrettable haircuts. Real change comes from understanding, compromise, and working together despite disagreements. It comes from recognizing that political differences don't have to destroy personal relationships, and that democracy requires accepting outcomes you don't like. The 4B movement represents the opposite of all these things, which is why it will ultimately join the long list of failed activism fads that promised revolution but delivered only division.